Good morning. I'm going to officially call the State Water Control Board for the August meeting to order. And it's a pleasure to be here, by the way. Nice to see everyone in our nice little space. We thank you for coming and being a part of the process. So before we get started with anything this morning, I'm going to ask for introductions of the board. So I'm going to start down here to my left with Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Michelle Johnson, representing Charles City County.
I'm Tommy Brennan from Henrico County.
Good morning, Scott Cameron, Fairfax County.
Jerry Kilgore, Henrico County.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Yob from Henrico County.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Avani from Loudoun County.
And just so everyone knows, Mr. Avani has joined us in these meetings, and so we welcome him. Thank you for being here. And by the way, I'm also Lou Wallace from deep Southwest Virginia, I usually say. So it's my pleasure to be here and to host everyone today. So before we move on, we're going to have a set of rules that I'm going to read. So attendees may not erect any signage inside or outside the meeting room or the building. Attendees are not entitled to be disorderly or disrupt the meeting from proceeding in an orderly, efficient, and effective fashion. Disruptive behavior may result in a recess or removal from the meeting. Possession of use of any device that may disrupt the conduct of the business is prohibited, including but not limited to voice amplification equipment, bullhorns, blowhorns, sirens, or other noise-producing devices, as well as signs on sticks, poles, or stakes, or helium-filled balloons. All attendees are asked to be respectful of all speakers. Rules will be enforced fairly and impartially, not only to ensure the efficient and effective conduct of business, but also to ensure no interference with the business of the complex, its employees, and its guests. Attendees wishing to record the proceedings are welcome to do so. However, you may not interfere with the business of the meeting, nor impede the view or participation of other meeting attendees and staff. No smoking is allowed unless in a designated outside space. This includes tobacco and e-cigarettes. No alcohol, fireworks, pyrotechnics, weapons, or any substances, items controlled by law are allowed. No firearms are allowed in the state's contracted spaces except for firearms carried by law enforcement officers or authorized security personnel. All violators may be subject to removal from the meeting facility. Anyone removed from the facility may not re-enter. Anyone who fails to comply with removal may be charged with trespass. So, and the next items we'll talk about are public forum, so that's down the road somewhere. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I will ask for approval of the minutes of the last board meeting, which was June 30th, 2025.
Madam Chairman, so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Mr. Kilgore. Any discussion on the minutes? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, we have on our agenda some disclosures that are going to have to be taken care of before we get started. So our first disclosure will be from Mr. Yob, and the next disclosure will be from Mr. Avani. Mr. Yob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning again, everybody. I submitted to the DEQ staff a signed transactional disclosure statement pursuant to the Virginia State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Act. Before participating in and voting on the agenda items today identified as tabs B and D, I'd like to note that I have a personal interest which are affected by these transactions as I am employed as a deputy county manager for the county of Henrico, and we are affected by those actions. Henrico County, like other Virginia localities, is subject to 9 VAC 25-820 and 9 VAC 25-151. Madam Chair, I herewith certify that I am able to participate fairly in agenda items B and D, objectively and in the public interest. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Yob. Mr. Avini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I submitted to DEQ staff a signed transactional disclosure statement pursuant to the Virginia State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Act before participating in and voting on the agenda items identified as tabs B and D. I have a personal interest affected by the transactions being considered because of my employment as an Assistant Director of General Services for Loudoun County, Virginia. Loudoun County, like other Virginia localities, is subject to 9 VAC 25-820 and 9 VAC 25-151. I am able to participate in agenda items tabs B and D fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So next, we're going to be moving on to tab B, and this is the General Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Watershed, presented by Ms. Galley. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Is this working? Yes. All right. Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Laura Galli. I am with the Office of IPTIS Permits. We are considering the Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Watershed Permit Regulation for total nitrogen and total phosphorus discharges and nutrient trading in the Chesapeake Bay watershed in Virginia, 9 VAC 25-820, which expires on December 31st, 2026. We are at the proposed stage of our normal reissuance process, and we will be asking that the board authorize a public comment period and hearing for the proposed amendments. Here is a general overview of the regulation and general permit. The regulation governs the discharge of point source nutrients from wastewater treatment and industrial facilities located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We currently have 142 facilities covered by this permit. The initial permit was issued in 2007 in response to the January 2005 Virginia Chesapeake Bay Nutrient and Sediment Reduction Strategy, and the permit has been reissued every 5 years since. The notice of intended regulatory action, public comment period, ran from August 12 through September 11, 2024. We received one comment, which was very supportive of the regulation and general permit, and the individual requested to be included in the technical advisory committee, which was granted. We had 7 approved TAC members representing the regulated community and environmental groups. And we held 3 TAC meetings in the dates listed on this slide. The results of the TAC meetings are the amendments to the proposed regulations before you today. There are a number of changes to the regulation, and we first have some general updates. First of all, we are proposing to revise the regulation name to Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System General Permit Regulation for Nutrient Discharges and Trading in the Chesapeake Bay watershed to make it a little more concise and less redundant. Section 10 of the regulation is the definition. We're adding a definition for the Nutrient Offset Fund, which is referenced in the permit but was not defined. Section 40 is the Compliance Plans section. We are removing compliance plan language for the completed enhanced nutrient removal certainty and chlorophyll A nutrient reduction facilities. And these are our proposed changes to Section 70, which is the actual general permit. First of all, we are changing, of course, the effective date of the permit to January 1st, 2027, and the expiration date to December 31st, 2031. We're proposing to revise Part 1B3, wastewater allocations wording of aggregate mass load to consolidated mass load. This section basically references those facilities that transfer wastewater allocation to a different facility under different ownership. And so the receiving facility will be assigned a consolidated mass load or consolidated wastewater allocation. This is to make a distinction with what we describe in Part 1B2, which is an aggregated mass load or aggregated wastewater allocation, which is given to an owner that owns several different facilities, and the aggregated wastewater allocation is the sum of the individual wastewater allocations assigned to the individual facilities under common ownership. We are adding Part 1B4 to address facilities in different tributaries that apply for a consolidated mass load limit. This is to provide some flexibilities to those owners that do own facilities that are located and discharged to different tributaries and may need to transfer wastewater allocation from one tributary to another. And these situations will be evaluated by DEQ on a case-by-case basis. We're adding Part 1B5, termination of a wastewater allocation, to explain what happens when a facilities permit is terminated with no flow diversion. Right now, there is no explanation on what exactly happens to this wastewater allocation, so we have described two different scenarios in this situation. And we are revising Part 1C3 to remove 9 VC 25-820-80B, the ENRC Schedule of Compliance references. And this slide shows the proposed changes to Part 1E1 monitoring requirements of the general permit. And I have two tables. The first one shows what we proposed and what we included in the final 2017 and that carry forward to the 2022 permit in terms of design flow ranges and monitoring frequencies. And I'm going to focus on the design flow ranges in pink and green. So as you can see, in 2017 and then 2022, we had a design flow range of 0.5 to 0.99 million gallons per day with a monitoring frequency of twice per week, and then a design flow range of 1.0 to 19.99 million gallons per day with also a monitoring frequency of twice per week. For the 2027 permit reissuance, the members of the Technical Advisory Committee recommended a reevaluation of these design flow ranges as well as the monitoring frequencies, because there is a concern that a monitoring frequency of twice per week represents a burden, especially for the smaller facilities. Oh. I'm not sure what happened. Okay. So for the 2027 permit, we are proposing to, first of all, maintain the 0.5 to 0.99 MGD, but reduce the monitoring frequency to twice per week to once per week, and then split the 1.0 to 19.99 MGD into two different flow tiers, the 1.0 to the 4.99 MGD, and also reduce the monitoring frequency to twice per week to once per week, and then the 5.0 to 19.99 MGD, maintaining the twice per week monitoring frequency. In support of these proposed changes, DEQ has presented to the EPA a summary of a statistical analysis that was conducted back in 2016. And the statistical analysis clearly showed that using existing monitoring data at that time, the proposed monitoring frequencies result in representative data and sufficiently capture the variability, because the original concern was that a once per week monitoring frequency would not capture the loading variabilities in the discharge of the smaller facilities, in the smaller design flow ranges. In addition to that, DEQ has also compared the proposed 2027 monitoring frequencies to other nutrient general permits around the country. And what we're proposing, the monitoring frequencies are either as frequent or even more frequent than other general permits in the country. So given the supporting data provided and the comparison to similar permits across the nation, DEQ believes that the revised monitoring frequencies requirements are sufficient to capture loading variability for an accurate accounting of annual loads. To continue on with proposed changes to Section 70, we are revising Part 1E monitoring requirements to add rounding and monthly average total nitrogen and total phosphorus calculation language. This is no new requirement, it's simply clarifying language for the permittees, and it mirrors exactly what we already include in our VPT's individual permits. We are revising Part 1-2B, acquisition of wastewater allocations, to include new options to receive point source credits from the nutrient exchange. This is in response to the nutrient exchange revising their bylaws to include these options, so we also wanted to include these options in the general permit. And we're revising Part 3, conditions applicable to all VIPTIS permits, to include an updated link to the online pollution response preparedness portal and clarify that this portal shall be used outside of normal working hours. And finally, Section 80, facilities subject to reduced individual total nitrogen and total phosphorus wastewater allocations. We're revising Section 80A and B, which are two tables, to remove those facilities that have met or will achieve compliance by the expiration date of the current permit with the ENRC and chlorophyll A reduced wastewater allocation. And in the errata sheet that you were provided, we are also revising the nutrient credit prices. So we are basically changing the payments to the nutrient offset fund shall be in the amount of $9.23 for each pound of nitrogen and $20.26 for each pound of phosphorus. And this will also be included in the permit as a revision. I'm going to stop here for questions.
Board, any questions for Ms. Golly? Hearing none, please proceed.
Okay. Staff recommends that the board authorize a public comment period and public hearing for amendments to the General Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System watershed permit regulation for total nitrogen and total phosphorus discharges and nutrient trading in the Chesapeake Bay watershed in Virginia, 9 VC 25-820. And staff recommends that the board authorize the staff to serve as hearing officer at the public hearing. Oh, sorry.
Board, you've heard staff recommendation. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we're going to be moving to tab C with the Virginia Pollution Abatement VPA Permit Regulation 9 VAC 25-32, the implementation of Chapter 209 of the 2024 Acts of the Assembly, presented by Mr. Zaredka. I got it.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Neil Zarodka. I am the manager of DEQ's Office of Land Application Programs. And this morning, I'm going to be bringing to your attention proposed changes to the VPA Permit Regulation 9 VAC 25-32. And this relates to implementation of Chapter 209 of the 2024 Acts of Assembly, which were brought forth by House Bill 870, relating to biosolids management during extreme weather events. So, let me put my glasses on so that I can see what I'm doing. The Virginia General Assembly passed House Bill 870 during the 2024 General Assembly session, directing DEQ to amend the applicable biosolids regulations to promote flexibility in land application permits when land application is limited due to increased intensity, frequency, and duration of storm events. And before I get into our proposed changes, I wanted to offer you some background as to what led up to this action and to some of the conditions that existed, as well as the existing conditions in the regulation. So in 2018, this was a record-setting year for much of the East Coast. Virginia was one of 9 states that had the wettest year on record. The records were not necessarily just for amount of rain, but the number of days with measurable rain. And this is more problematic for land application than actually one single event with a lot of rain, because it makes it difficult for the contractors to access the farmland and apply biosolids on a normal schedule and at a normal pace. So in what happened in the fall and winter of 2018 after the rain came and then into 2019 as storage capacity was being managed is that biosolids that would normally have been land applied by the end of 2018 were in storage. And those storage facilities that were managed and operated by the contractors were all near capacity. Also, at wastewater treatment plants, not all wastewater treatment plants have storage at their locations. Those that did were at or near capacity and were having issues finding places to put material that couldn't be land applied. Also note, as you've heard me speak when we were talking about other issues related to land application, the alternatives are limited. Landfilling did serve as a resource in 2018 and 19 to mitigate some of those storage challenges. But during prolonged periods of wet weather, landfills are also going to want to limit the amount of materials that have a lot of moisture in them coming into the facility. So it'll even be limited even more so than before. Some additional incineration did occur in 2019, but the main limitation there was the number of facilities that are available. So as far as the way we operate in the current VPA regulations for storage, all the land appliers have some form of routine storage, and this is storage where they're going to be holding material for greater than 45 days, and that material can be land applied on any of their permitted sites. These facilities must be constructed on an engineered surface. They're subject to the sewage collection and treatment regulations with respect to the engineering approval certificate to construct and operate. And they also must obtain local government approval in order to be constructed. And this has proven to be, in some cases, an impediment to getting new routine storage built. On-site storage is another type of storage that allows for storage of biosolids less than 45 days, but that material can only be applied on fields owned or operated by the site where the on-site storage pad is located. So it would be for a large farm that gets a lot of biosolids, and they have a constructed surface where they can put material. A roof is not required for these facilities, but the best management practices are required to make sure that contact with stormwater is abated. The surface has to be constructed to meet permeability and strength requirements. It must these sites must be approved by DEQ, and they don't require local government approval. We also have a provision for extended staging. So staging is the part of the land application activity where material is brought to the field and put into a pile on a field that's permitted for land application. And it may remain, it may be applied the same day, or it may remain there for up to 7 days before they actually land apply it. If weather conditions change and prohibit land application, it can be staged for longer than 7 days, but it must be covered. And so because these provisions in the regulations proved to be less than what was needed to manage the situation in 2018 and 19, the General Assembly directed DEQ to provide some additional flexibility in the regulations that would allow some additional regulatory certainty as well as transparency in the process during these emergency conditions. So DEQ convened a regulatory advisory panel, and before that we had our notice of intended regulatory action that occurred for between September 23rd and October 23rd. We got 11 comments. Most of these were requests to join the regulatory advisory panel. There were a couple of requests for public hearing because the provisions were that if we received 25 or more requests for a public hearing, that would be part of the public notice process. We only got a couple of those. As well as folks were exhibiting PFAS concerns, which are outside of the scope of this regulatory action. So we convened a regulatory advisory panel that consisted of various members of the regulated community, wastewater treatment plants, as well as agricultural groups and environmental non-governmental organizations. We met twice in April and May of this year and came up with the recommendations that I'm going to outline. And before I do that, I will note that in my more than 20 years at DEQ and being involved in regulatory advisory panels, this was one of the most collaborative groups that I've ever worked with. I was frankly amazed at the amount of give and take from both sides and the discussion that happened to come to a solution, which doesn't always happen with the topic of biosolids. So the proposed amendments are included in two sections of the regulation. The first is Section 410, which speaks to the option to include an emergency management plan as part of the biosolids management plan that they maintain in the permit. The permittee would outline their available storage options, what their capacity is, specify the conditions that would trigger implementation of emergency procedures, and then that plan would allow deviation from certain permit conditions that are identified in the plan while the plan is active. It would require DEQ approval of the plan after it's submitted so that we can ensure that all the essential components are included. So also included in Section 410 are more details about that plan, which allows deviations from very specific requirements. There's a limited number of regulatory requirements that they could deviate from. And this would include some flexibility with on-site storage, meaning that they could not only land apply on the sites on the farm where it was located, but also other sites moving it off of that farm. The amount of material that they could store there would be increased, as well as the time. There would be flexibility to exceed that 45-day time period. There is also the provision to allow flexibility in sign posting. Under normal conditions, a permit requires that signs be posted at the land application site at least 5 business days before land application. And in some cases where the land appliers are looking for the driest sites, it would allow them to reduce the number of days before they post those signs. The plans could allow variations from their normal operations and maintenance procedures, and it would also include the provision for adding in emergency storage locations. So the provisions for what an emergency storage location would be and how that would work are included as proposed changes to Section 32550. These locations would have to be pre-approved by DEQ. The conditions for emergency storage would be most similar to on-site storage with some variations. They would be required to notify the locality after DEQ approved that. There would be required presence of the certified land applier from the land application permittee when they're storing material there, when it arrives, and when it's taken off. There are additional requirements for inspections and reporting of the material that's stored there. And these locations would have to be emptied before their routine and on-site storage locations. So they would have to be brought back to normal conditions prior to the others. Back to Section 410, as when that emergency management plan would be implemented, if emergency conditions arose, the permittee would notify DEQ, documenting that an emergency exists, outline their strategy that they're undertaking to utilize all the available storage they have, and to work through those conditions. While that plan is active, there's also an addendum to their monthly reporting requirements to let us know how the emergency conditions are progressing and how soon they expect to be getting back to normal land application. The active emergency management plan would end, and the provisions that it allows when land application is no longer limited. So when things start to dry out and normal land application can proceed, that is when the plan would end. So before I move on to staff recommendation, do you have any questions?
Any questions for? Okay, I'm not getting any.
Staff are requesting the board to approve the draft language as a proposed regulation and to proceed with public comment.
Board, you've heard staff recommendation. What's your pleasure?
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the staff recommendation.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're moving on to a fast-track regulation. Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, VPDS, general permit regulation for discharges of stormwater associated with industrial activity, which is non-VAC 25-151. It is technical corrections for consistency with stormwater regulation. That's going to be presented in tab D by Mr. Bryan. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. So again, we're looking at a fast-track regulation for technical corrections for the general permit for industrial stormwater associated with industrial activity. The regulation, I'll move on to the first page here. The purpose and scope of these changes, the proposed amendments update the industrial stormwater general permit, 9 VAC 25-151, which went into effect in July 1 of 2024. For consistency with recent amendments to the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management, or VESM regulation, 9 VAC 25-875, which went into effect July 1, 2025. So these are technical changes to correct cross-references to be consistent with state law and to provide clarity and certainty. So detailed changes, there are really only 3, but they're made in multiple sections. The first is to update the total phosphorus load for new development from 0.41 pounds per acre per year to 0.26 pounds per acre per year to be consistent with 9 VAC 25-875-580. And this amendment is made in the registration statement section of the Industrial Stormwater General Permit 15160 and in the General Permit section 15170. The second change is to specify that compliance with the water quality design criteria may be determined by utilizing the VESM regulation, and that simply updates to the citations, and those again are in the registration statement section 15160 and in the general permit section 15170. The final change is to specify that information about BMP design specifications and pollutant removal efficiencies is available from the Virginia Stormwater BMP Clearinghouse, and that is an updated web link which goes to the DEQ external webpage. That amendment is also made again in the registration statement section 15160, the general permit section in 15170, and it's also made in the Chesapeake Bay TMDL compliance section in 151-400. Okay, and that's it. Are there any questions?
Any questions from Mr. Bryan? Hearing none, you may proceed.
Okay. And bear with me, this is the long one. So staff recommendation is to authorize DEQ to promulgate the proposal for public comment using the fast track process established in section 2.2-4012.1 of the Administrative Process Act for regulations expected to be non-controversial. The board's authorization constitutes its adoption of the regulation at the end of the public comment period, provided that 1, no objection to use of the fast track process is received from 10 or more persons, or any member of the applicable standing committee of either House of the General Assembly or of the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules. And 2, DEQ does not find it necessary, based on public comments or any other reason, to make any changes to the proposal. And then secondly, staff also recommends the board authorize DEQ to set an effective date 15 days after the close of the 30-day public comment period, again, provided that, one, the proposal completes the fast-track rulemaking process as provided in Section 2.2-4012.1 of the Administrative Process Act, and two, DEQ does not find it necessary to make any changes to the proposal.
Thank you. Board, you've heard staff recommendation. It's been read to you. I'm not repeating it. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Move the staff recommendation.
I have a motion to move on the staff recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to other business. We have a report on the board regarding controversial permits. Mr. Thomas, you're going to do Centigro surface water withdrawal at Caroline County and the U.S. Army Garrison, Fort Belvoir. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Bryant Thomas. I am the interim director of DEQ's Water Division. It's good to be with you this morning. I'm here to provide a controversial permit report. This report is required by Section 10.1-1184.1B of the code that provides that at each of the regular board meetings, the department will provide an overview and update regarding any controversial permit that's pending before the department. And a controversial permit really includes a water permitting action for which a public hearing has been granted. And I will note as we touch base and move forward that the three permits that we're going to touch base on this morning, you have received updates on in previous meetings and some in numerous previous meetings. So this is really just a status update for where these projects and permitting actions stand. The first permit that we'll touch base on is a Virginia pollution abatement permit. It is for Centigro Central LLC in Essex County. As we get started, I will mention, and we have three different permits today, and they're all different. There are three different permitting programs and three different types of permitting actions. This is a modification of a VPA permit. These permits have a 10-year permit term. So Centigro holds contracts with multiple wastewater treatment plants to land apply biosolids. The regulations require a separate permit for each county in which a land applier applies biosolids. And each permit authorizes multiple land application sites. And a permit is required when adding new land application sites. There's a summary or history of events. I'm going to focus on the more recent ones, but give a little history of this particular permit. It was issued in 2016 by DEQ for 15,331 acres authorized for land application. In 2019, that permit was modified to add an additional 4,330.1 acres, and then we received a modification request application. It was complete in July of 2024, and that is for expansion or addition of 6,337.1 acres. To give you a sense of what this looks like on the landscape, if you will, graphically, you can see where Essex County is on the map. On the top right shows the yellow call-out of the county, and then the center call-out box shows the county. The Rappahannock River is to the east, and the green areas are those areas that are currently authorized for land application. The burgundy-colored areas are the additional 6,337.1 acres that are being requested under this permit modification. That would be a total of 25,759.3 total acres authorized with this request. I'm going to not go through all these dates, but I would note that really as far as an update, our public hearing was held in May of this year. Public comment period ran through early June. We reviewed, considered, and prepared responses to those public comments, and just this past Monday evening, we had a public hearing on the summary of public comments, and then we would expect a final permitting action on this in September. So I'll pause there to see if you have any questions.
Board, do you have any questions? Go ahead.
Our next permit is a Virginia Water Protection Program permit. It's a VWP permit, and this is for a surface water withdrawal, a new permit application request. It's the Caroline County Rappahannock River Water Supply. Again, I'm not going to go through the full history of events here, but just kind of calling out some key dates. In September of 2024, we initially held a public hearing on a draft permit. We received, following that initial public hearing, which we received a lot of feedback and public comment on, we received updated information, updated water demand projections and calculations from the applicant. We finally received the final supporting application and application materials in May of this year. We settled on a final permit in July of this year, and we are currently in a public comment period on this updated draft permit. The comment period started on August 10th and will run through September 25th, and we have a public hearing scheduled for September 10th of this year. We would expect, after the close of the public hearing comment period, to have a summary of public comments hearing in October, and again, expecting final action on this permit action in November of this year. So I'll pause there to see if they have any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, you may proceed.
And our last permit is a Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or VPDS permit. This is for a permit reissuance for the U.S. Army Garrison Fort Belvoir. And I will mention too, so our first permit we looked at has a 10-year permit term. The second permit, the VWP permit, has a 15-year permit term. And this last permit, the VPDS permit, has a 5-year permit term. So this is the renewal or reissuance of the permit for Fort Belvoir. Some key dates here that I would note are the public comment period. We held a hearing in June of this year. The comment period closed on June 18th, and we currently have a comment response or public comment response hearing scheduled for September 15th. And we would expect final action on this permit in October of this year. And with that, I'll pause for any questions.
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Next on your agenda is a Mountain Valley Pipeline update by Ms. Davenport.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Nice to see you all. I don't know, how do I get this up there, guys? Thank you. So I am here to give an update on the project status of the Mountain Valley Pipeline Mainline project. What you will see in here today is really not at all dissimilar from the last update because the project is currently in post-restoration, which means the work is focused on achieving permanent vegetation, maintaining erosion and sediment control, maintaining erosion and sediment controls until such time as that vegetation is uniform and surviving, and we need to get there because that is what will inhibit erosion from the project. These pictures were taken earlier in August. As you can see, they kind of speak for themselves, very lush, very green. I think we are seeing some real success in terms of reaching even the end of post-restoration. We continue to inspect the project to make sure that E&S controls are being maintained. And then the final step is removing controls when they are no longer needed. And again, just a series of pictures in a variety of locations that were taken about 2 weeks ago. We do continue to install full-length water bars in locations where failures have been identified. We did authorize MVP to make those extensions. They were originally not conceived as part of the project plans. And then again, we are just working on post-restoration. For the period June 20th to August 18th, DEQ inspected 2 complaints. Our third-party contractor, MBP, inspected 1. DEQ performed 16 compliance inspections. Our third-party compliance contractor conducted 220. We did note 73 issues of corrective actions needed. And when we say issues of noncompliance, usually that means that those actions weren't completed in the required amount of time, and there were 2 issues of noncompliance. And then, as you may recall, our assessment of stipulated penalties is done on a quarterly basis, and we run about a quarter behind from your meeting. So the last period of stipulated penalty assessment was March 11th through June 12th, and we assessed $7,000 in stipulated penalties in accordance with the consent decree. And with that, are there any questions?
Madam Chair, may I ask?
Yes, questions?
Ms. Davenport, can you go all the way back to the first photos that you showed up, that showed
Sure.
that? The bottom left, how long ago was that planted, do you know?
The picture is to August 4th. I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, that's a fantastic stand of
Lazy Susans, is that what they are?
Black-eyed.
Black-eyed Susans, sorry. I'm a lawyer.
So I was just trying to find out with the natives coming in that strong, how long ago it was. Guess.
I don't
Year,
know.
2 years, 3 years? 2 years, right, to establish. Okay. Madam Chair, that's all I had.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, Board, we've come down to the, looks like to the end of the, almost to the end. Do we have any public comments at all? Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So future meeting dates, are those yet to be determined?
We're looking at a date in potentially for November, so I'll be polling the board.
Potentially a date in November, Board. Okay. Anything else from the board at this time?
Madam Chairman, in one of my other lives, I had an opportunity to engage with a number of agricultural communities across the Commonwealth, and in a number of cases, they're concerned about groundwater depletion and wells running dry. Some of them have hypothesized that there's a connection between water demand from data centers and groundwater depletion. So I'd like to request at some future meeting of the board, DEQ, provide whatever insights it might have about the data center demand for water and what the implications might be for groundwater depletion on a regional basis.
Could I say we'd be happy to do that? I might want to wait till the spring. The reason is that there is a General Assembly action that is requiring VIMS to do some studies, and our staff is going to be just getting involved in that so we get some more data. But the good news is as far as I know, I don't think there's any, maybe there's 1 or 2 data centers that use groundwater. They typically are using surface water, and almost only, except for a couple exceptions, they're buying it from municipalities. So it's really not a groundwater issue, it's more of a surface water issue, but we want to look at the whole process. So it's already started, that analysis. And there's also a regional watershed plan meeting going that's just starting as well that the General Assembly enacted. We had to realign some of the planning districts. So hopefully in the spring we'll have some good information.
That would be great. I'm happy to wait until the spring, until, the analysis has been finished, but you're very interested in the issue. So thank you.
Yeah, there's also just, there's an ad hoc committee working on this as well that Jonathan Rock is in charge of, looking at those grandfathered water withdrawals because that's part of the problem or part of the issue. And then there's, we have the Eastern Groundwater Study Area as well. And so there's a whole bunch of moving pieces right at the moment that hopefully will come together. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I guess all hearts are clear, and I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion, I need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We're officially adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Record time.